Hey, welcome into the Irish NFL show presented by Cassidy Travel live tonight across social media, Twitter, YouTube, etc. Michael McQuaid joined by Colin Cronin. Colin, just the two of us, I guess we can make it if we try tonight.
You've got Mark's puns there. Yes, Michael, and happy Halloween.
Happy Bank Holiday, I hear to you as well. This is fun. Yeah, well, let's just put it out there. We were both in London for the last 4 or 5 days. So how are you feeling? Apart from the game, are you ready to go? Are you ready? Did you catch much of the action last night? Did you have to rewatch it? So for people listening in the podcast, I caught the late schedule live, and I had to sit back this morning and watch the early schedule. But it's always annoying when you have to go back, isn't it? I know it's first world problems, Colin, but it's always fun having to do that.
Yeah, I caught a lot of the kind of the early games and none of the late games. So I ended up catching up on those earlier on today, which had the backdrop of going on hour five of fireworks. They started here at 4 p.m. I am hoping that this is the culmination. They started here in August, so fireworks have been going on for longer than the NFL season. And hoping tonight is the culmination. Maybe they're celebrating AJ Brown's 3 touchdowns.
Obviously, very happy Halloween to everyone listening. I'm presuming you haven't had any trick or treaters annoy you tonight. And if the door does ring in the next half an hour, because I know your office is right at your window beside your door, you're
Yep.
not going to answer, no?
No, we have had loads, which has been fun, and fair play to both the parents and the kids in terms of some of the effort on some of the costumes. Truly phenomenal. But I think maybe at 9 o'clock we might be safe.
Let's jump into the games from Sunday. First off, Broncos column in London. We were obviously at the game yesterday in Wembley. I think it was both our first time doing media in Wembley. So it was interesting to see because I've been to obviously football games, soccer games, etc. At Wembley. A different experience going to an NFL game, albeit in that capacity. Um, the game sort of came alive at the end. I would say. I mean, I'm trying to look at this from a neutral standpoint here. It probably wasn't the best of games, but it did end well. It was entertaining at that point, and it was another close game. The Saints Vikings was close. The Giants against the Packers was a really really good game. And in this situation, the Broncos get a score late in the game, and honestly, they get away over the line against the Jags. I mean, it wasn't the best performance, but they get a win, and they arguably saved Nathaniel Hackett's job/career for another week. Am I being rude saying that, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it felt a lot, to be honest, like that Saints Vikings game in London, where it kind of came alive a little bit towards the end, and obviously Latavius Murray getting a touchdown, which he also did for the Saints. So a couple of parallels there. I think for a tale of two halves almost in some ways, because the Broncos started out so poorly, Michael. I mean, Russell Wilson could have been picked off on the very first play of the game. He obviously got picked off just very soon after that. And for a long time, it looked like the Jags, were in the ascendancy. Ultimately, a very strange play call I felt on I don't know why they didn't just run it up the gut on Justin Simmons when he intercepted Lawrence. I just thought that was made to run the ball. And that was a point where the Broncos were really on the back foot. They'd given away so many penalties. And I think if the Jags had scored there, who knows how it might have played out. But Simmons came up with a really important pick. And then the Broncos managed to drive down the field. Jerry Jeudy looked, more like WR who went in the first round, and Greg Dulcich came up big for the Broncos in the third. But yeah, I mean, look, the Broncos offense still has a long, long way to go. There are still significant issues on that O-line, on the interior of the O-line. The Broncos probably got lucky in some ways, and you hate to see players get injured. But if Lloyd Cushenberry had remained in there, I mean, think about that. The center got done with a false start. The guy who controls the start got done for a false start. That tells you how well he was doing. Graham Glasgow came in and made a huge difference. I think for the Jags, the concern, and again, look, we're going to have to see how it develops, but there have to be some concerns at this point around Trevor Lawrence, because the generational talent has yet to have a full game where he's really put it all together. He absolutely flashes, and there are moments, and in mitigation of him, he's in a new system, and you would have to say the weapons around him aren't stellar. And look, we have seen QBs take a jump when they get a really, really good weapon around them, and perhaps that is what the Jags need. But he needs to stop making the same mistakes that is what we were, I think, hearing from Jags fans and media after the game.
It was really, it was really interesting to see, Lawrence, because there was a couple of points in the game where you thought that the Jags had this by the metaphorical horns. They just had to grasp onto it and just take the game. For example, I think you're talking there now, but just Lawrence's play in general, the play where Justin Simmons intercepts it, like that should have been a 14-zip ball game at that point. And who knows what would have happened then. The crowd could have completely turned. There was a lot of orange in the crowd yesterday. Could have completely turned. Towards the end, Colin, the Jags had their chances. And we've seen at the end what happened, the interception again. Just lots of mistakes. And this was a team that, again, made mistakes last week against the Giants and were punished then, and they were punished again yesterday. Latavius Murray making a record. He's the first ever running back to score a touchdown for two separate teams in London in the same season. I guess, at the end of the day, this is the end of the London game for the year. We've got Munich coming up in about a week and a bit, 2 weeks, just under 2 weeks to Munich. Have you been impressed with the London games this year? I've really enjoyed them. Like, I think all games have been fun, but more so, it's just great to have 3 games back, and they flew in very quickly, didn't they?
Yeah, no, they did, and they, in fairness, kind of 3 games that came right down to the end in each of them, which is what all you can really ask for. It was interesting to be back at Wembley for an NFL game, and it's obviously a historic venue and everything that goes with it, but it does highlight just how good a job Spurs have done on their new stadium and making that, fantastic for both football and for the NFL, because it is just incredibly suited to it. For me, going to Spurs and being at an NFL stadium in the US, it's the stadium part is equally as good. The fan experience, obviously, with tailgating and stuff is very different. But in terms of the field, what you can see, the views and how it's all set up, it's the equal of stadiums stateside.
Yeah, I never thought that. Everyone always said about Wembley and stuff, and now I actually agree with them. Tottenham's the better stadium for the NFL. But I had a great day yesterday and met a lot of people from Ireland over the last few days. A lot of people that listen to this podcast. Met people in the airport this morning, going from Gatwick to Belfast, that listen to the podcast. Listen to you as well, Colin, on different things as well. So it's fun. One thing I'll say, just to finish up on this Broncos Jaguars game, because it is relevant, because tomorrow is the trade deadline. I've seen Keith has put a question in there. Do get some questions in, folks, and if it's in relation to the game, we'll either get them during or probably at the end, to be honest. He's asked about Bradley Chubb. Where do you think he's going to end up? Because we've seen it was the Dolphins are one team interested in him. It's going to take, if you're the Broncos, Colin, you're going to want to try and get a first rounder. You can see people arguing, we'll try and get 2 second rounders, because that's when you're going to try and get some sort of value in the draft next year. Broncos don't have any decent picks next year or the year after, so I can see why they're trying to do it, but he's being shopped, but they're not shopping a wide receiver as we go through tomorrow.
Well, the talk, I suppose, has been they may look to move Chubb on if they get the right offer for him. And as you said, like right now, the Broncos are down in terms of the draft picks. And look, their draft picks, this year's draft picks contributed hugely yesterday. They wouldn't have won that game. Nick Benito had a sack and a half over the past couple of games. Greg Dulcich was huge yesterday. He was fantastic. And Mattis was really important as well. He's been starting cornerback for the past 3 games. So the Broncos, I think, need to get some picks back. That's why they're looking at Chubb. Obviously, look, given where the Broncos took Chubb and now he's playing up to that level, I think there will be some disappointment amongst Broncos fans. But I think if they were to get a first for him, that would certainly be tempered. Any team with serious aspirations to make a deep playoff run needs an elite pass rush, and Bradley Chubb certainly would bring that. I think for Bradley Chubb, he's probably suffered a little bit like Von Miller, playing on teams that just weren't in the lead. Like, that's when pass rushers come into their own, playing opposition where they have to throw the ball. I think whoever, if he does get traded and the Broncos get a decent price, whoever gets him will be getting a very, very good player.
Yeah, check out Twitter tomorrow or Tuesday, or whatever day you're listening to this. Tuesday is the deadline. You can check out the Irish NFL Show on Twitter and Instagram for any updates in relation. That is probably one of the big moves, and it could even happen while we record live here. Let's see. One game that we missed live, Colin, because of the travel to the aeroporto last night. That was good fun. Was the Panthers and the Falcons. Now I watched this back. Wow, I mean, I actually feel a bit bad for DJ Moore. Confirmed today now that PJ Walker is the starting quarterback going forward for the Panthers. Baker Mayfield has accepted the backup role. Falcons get the win, move to 4-4 in the season, lead the division. I mean, I feel like we could talk about this game for half an hour, couldn't we? I mean, Foreman, leading rusher on the day, great day. DJ Moore, outside of the result for the Panthers, 152 yards receiving. Like, that is ridiculous. Great game.
Yeah, it really was. And I think a testament to, look, Arthur Smith and the job he's done. We talked about that on the show before previously a little bit in terms of, a lot of people, including most of us, didn't think the Falcons would have the record that they have and the fact that they have continued to impress. But the Panthers look absolutely revitalized, having moved Matt Rule and his staff on. And yeah, they should have won this game yesterday. Obviously, a lot of talk on today about the penalty and whether it should have been a penalty and should players be allowed to celebrate, etc., etc. And so I suppose, I mean, it depends. The talk has been that, technically it shouldn't have been a penalty because he was off the field, but equally it's in the aftermath of scoring a touchdown. I think it comes down to refereeing in interpretation. So I like, when you consider this, right? We talked about this on the show a couple of weeks ago. PJ Walker, in the space of 3 weeks, right? He had a game where he didn't throw a pass downfield further than 1 yard, right? 1 yard was the furthest he threw downfield. And on that pass last night, that was the longest recorded pass. So going back to when they started recording this, that is the longest downfield pass, and it was an amazing pass. It was a fantastic. It wasn't a Hail Mary. It was just brilliantly put in there. So I can understand, and given the time left on the game, I can understand the enthusiasm to celebrate. It was interesting because it brought out so much, Michael. You had obviously fans of both teams debating it. You had the rest of the league debating it. You had wide receivers coming out in support of Moore, blaming the kicker and saying the kicker should have just done his job. Then you had Lawrence Tynes and the Kickers Union coming out in support of kickers and saying, hey, this was a gimme, and then he messed it up. So yeah, it all comes down to interpretation. And this is one of the areas around the league where we know that this is the type of thing that comes up again and again, right? What is a catch? What is excessive celebration? What is taunting? As we'll probably talk about later when it comes to the 49ers-Rams game. This comes up time and time again. Does the NFL like the fact that we all spend the day after talking about it?
Well, the play itself, when it was 34-28, the pass from PJ Walker was just, I don't want to say it was elite, but it was, if Aaron Rodgers done it, we'd all be going mad. 2 lads on DJ Moore, and he got away. And frankly, I have no issue with the celebration. I thought it was great crack. If somebody does it in football, or soccer, sorry, nobody really cares. It's a bit of crack. You might get booked, but, that's it. I don't know. I think for both teams, for a start, for the Falcons, the fact that they're now leading the division it's incredible, because Tampa Bay, I don't want to be the lad to say it, because they played on Thursday night and we haven't talked about this. We talked about it in person on Friday when we said about Tom Brady and stuff, but Atlanta could go on a run here. If Atlanta were to win 4 out of the next 7 games, right? Or hell, 4 out of the next 8, okay? They're sitting with a chance, a real chance, especially in that division. For the Panthers, I look at PJ Walker and the way in which he played yesterday and think, we've got a quarterback here. He was the third string at one point in this team, and he had Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, and now look, all this money picks wasted in the 2 quarterbacks I just mentioned, and then PJ sitting there, happy days. I'd love to see it work out for him. I think it's amazing what happens when you fire a coach, isn't it? Like suddenly it just, like last week it bounced back, albeit we've seen the sort of team they were playing against with Brady in the Bucks, but just a really, really good game. I feel like we need all 4 of us in here for the whole argument in regards to the celebration. I think we need to have a discussion at the end of the season in regards to celebrations, taunting, different things. I think it's honestly quite soft at times, and it takes away from the game. It doesn't make it as enjoyable to watch, and I think that's the issue. I mean, can you see it being changed in the off season, or do you think it's a topic for us to discuss in March when we're scraping the barrel?
Well, we can certainly talk about it. I don't think it'll get changed. I think that is the league's prerogative, and that's how they approach it. And we've seen in the same way, Michael, around the rough and the passer, different refs will interpret it differently. But ultimately, the way the NFL sees it is it wants to prevent it because it feels that it might lead to fights, and they're worried about the impact of that. I think, sometimes it is absolutely, the refereeing is excessive rather than the celebrations, but we know in which the way, rule changes require agreement amongst the ownership group. So I wouldn't hold my breath on it changing.
Let's jump on CMC and the Niners. Wow. Passing touchdown, receiving touchdown, rushing touchdown. I mean, both. I mean, the Panthers, in terms of their picks, have benefited from this move. But there was literally people in San Francisco that were saying that the Niners didn't need to upgrade or look at their running back position. They had too many injuries or needs elsewhere. I mean, they're starting to look like idiots because he was unbelievable yesterday. But he brings a different dynamic to this Niners team, Colin. He completely changes the game for them as far as I'm concerned. For the Rams, It's a situation where we're going into this point of the season where you need to start performing. Matthew Stafford, 22 of 33. They really, really struggled on the run yesterday, and that was their biggest downfall. They need to find a way to exploit that very quickly, or else they're going to struggle down the stretch. I still feel that even if they're sitting at 3-4, they can try and get a run going. The Niners, because of the point that they brought in McCaffrey and the depth that they have, and for all that has been said about Jimmy Garoppolo, column on this broadcast, there were moments last night that he looked absolutely unbelievable. Was it the pass to who was it? The pass to George Kittle, I think, for the touchdown, if I'm correct. That was as good a throw as I've seen in the NFL all season. It was incredible. What a performance for the Niners going. I mean, look, it's a de facto home game, isn't it, going down there?
I'm not surprised. The 49ers generally own the Rams. And I mean, the 49ers would have been in the Super Bowl last year if Tart hadn't dropped one of the easiest interceptions you're ever likely to see. You need luck, obviously, to be Super Bowl champions, but the Rams had a significant amount of it in that game last year. For the Rams, problems on the O-line, which that impacts everything. The Stafford, the injuries and the inability of the O-line to give him protection. Cooper Kupp now has an ankle injury. He was the one piece on offense that was really performing.
Why was he still on? Why was he still on at the end?
Because he's the only thing I think they have, and they were, teams never want to.
Even at that scoreline, Colin, was it? It was 31-14 at that point, wasn't it? Like, I mean, okay, granted, they get. Well, yeah, they couldn't even come back into it.
Teams just never want to give up, I think, and somebody like Cooper Kupp never wants to give up. But the issue for the Rams on defense as well is that they're just not the same. We talked about it a little last week in terms of Aaron Donald, and teams are now able to double team him, and there's nothing else to get by. I will say, Michael, there's a reason that the 49ers traded for Christian McCaffrey, and it's because Jimmy Garoppolo was never going to carry them. And Christian McCaffrey is such a dynamic player, offers you so much. And I saw an amazing tweet earlier from Mason Dodd, who said, as a passer, Christian McCaffrey outscored Derek Carr. As a rusher, he outscored Jonathan Taylor. And as a receiver, he outscored Justin Jefferson yesterday. What a performance from Christian McCaffrey.
The performance from Christian McCaffrey yesterday was stunning. I recorded a segment yesterday for a company, and I said that I thought that Saquon Barkley could be the offensive player of the year. But as it stands, if he continues to perform, he had a great day personally yesterday. Got another touchdown. If McCaffrey keeps playing like this, I mean, I know we're in week 8 and he's only really come into the last few weeks. Jesus, I mean, let's see what happens. Jimmy Garoppolo, Colin, you have to give him some credit yesterday, yeah? Some, just a little bit. He played well.
Sure. You win with Jimmy, you don't win because of Jimmy.
And do you know what? If that could be the dynamic changing factor, as you said there. Bringing in CMC and having Jimmy there, that could be what they needed the whole time. So it could make the NFC a bit more interesting down the stretch, please God, because we're going to need it at the minute. So if you have the Eagles, the Cowboys, and the Niners as sort of the standouts at the minute, take that and we'll build it in a few weeks. Massive pressure from the from the Niners defense on Stafford in the second half yesterday. He only went 5 for 12 for 37 yards passing in the second half. That is not bueno, to say the least. I mean, that's shocking. But sure. He's Super Bowl champion, so we can't really say much at the minute. Right. Big game for the Niners there. Let's look at the Jets. Was I the only lad that picked the Patriots?
Yes, you were the only one.
Mark didn't pick the Patriots because I wasn't on the show the other night.
No, he begged for absolution and everything, but no, he did not pick the and yeah, it was. I mean, look, this is a game where ultimately, I mean, this is one of the ones that the Packers was a little bit like this in terms of the Jets won almost every aspect of the game except for the QB battle, and that's a problem. Like the Jets were really good in a significant number of aspects of the game, and the PFF rankings for the Jets, it has their defense as the best defense in the league. I mean, I know people will certainly argue with that, but you would have to say the Jets defense has been absolutely phenomenal. It has their offense as 32nd, and a lot of that is because of Breece Hall's injury. But the reality is Zach Wilson is massively struggling. The interceptions yesterday were awful, and he really, really struggles under pressure. Now Salah has come out and has said that Wilson will play for the entirety of the year, and they are sticking with him no matter kind of what happens, and the injury is the only thing that would see him sit. And I think that's probably what they have to do is just see what they can do. But you would have to say that they have tried to put the weapons around him. We know that there is some unhappiness there in the camp, and Elijah Moore was making his feelings known. So they have a big game coming up against the Bills next week. They were really up for this game. Dan
Oh,
Houses.
this was the big game for them. They were up for it big time.
They were, and so it's a I think it's a really disappointing loss for them, because Dan Houses said this is more than a game. This is an exorcism, and then ultimately they fall short, and Bill Belichick becomes the second winningest coach in NFL history.
This guy took my line. I had it sitting here, but I'll go with the numbers. 325 all-time wins. Congratulations, Billy. Don Shula is still in front with 347, so he needs 20. He needs 23 more wins. There's my GCSE maths, which I had to repeat, going in there to overtake Don Shula. Do you think he'll do it? I think he'll do it. Like I think he'll literally wait in 3 years.
Yeah, he has said now, like in the past, he regretted kind of, because he had said he wouldn't be coaching into his 70s, and he has spoken recently that he regrets saying that, and he feels he has plenty more time left in him. So who knows? He might well chase down that record.
Guy that didn't have a great day yesterday, Sauce Gardner, had 1 yard allowed, 2 tackles for loss, 45 coverage snaps. He was pretty much put to bed last night against the Patriots. But the Patriots, look, you have to give it to the Patriots, Colin. I haven't been on this broadcast since the Monday night because of last week and stuff. I mean, the Bears took them to school last week at home in New England, when everybody expected the Bears to completely fold. And fair play to the Bears for doing it. Zach Wilson, 20 of 41, and still has 355 passing yards in the day. He needs to find a way to clean that up. A bit more consistency. If you get the 25-26 and cut the interceptions, you have to give him time. And Salah is completely right to give him. He has to be given a couple of seasons. As you've said many times, Colin, you have to give people time. And it's very important to do that. But yeah, I can see why the Jets fans are disappointed. You know, like it's been a long time, and I think the expectation was, you know, let's go in, let's beat the Patriots, and let's go a few more games in front of them. Now they're only one game ahead. They're only one game ahead of them now, so it's going to be intriguing over the next few weeks to see. And as you said, they're playing the Bills next week, yeah, so it's going to be a fun game, and we'll talk about the Bills in a wee bit. Right. Excuse me. The next game we're going to talk about is the Seattle Seahawks defeating the New York Giants. Shout out to Brian, who is on his hollybobs, I think. Enjoy Center Parks or wherever you're going. I'm just putting that in there for the crack. Colin, interesting game this. I mean, when we say special team errors, we have like capital S, capital T, but a capital ERRORS. Talk about errors. Seattle moved to 5-3. Have the Giants reached the end of the road, do you think, in terms of this run? Or do you think it's just one minor blip? We had this conversation at Wembley last night.
Well, look, they were always going to hit another bump in the road, and I'm not surprised that they lost to the Seahawks. I think in terms of the end of the road, their next 2 games, Michael, are against the Texans and the Lions. So I would say no. They have not hit the end of the road as yet. Certainly, their run-in still features, I think, games that they will consider that they're in with a shot. They have to play the Commanders twice. And they have the Colts as well. Some very tough games, obviously, against the Cowboys, the Vikings, and the Eagles.
We had this conversation last night, even with a Giants fan who I'll say unnamed. He was around there as well. This whole defense, though, the energy they're given, they can't keep this up, can they? For more, like their offense outside of Barkley, Jones has improved a bit. Don't get me wrong, but their defense has carried them through the first few weeks of the season. Like let's be fair here.
No, yeah. Oh yeah, no, it has. But remember, like, this is year 1 of Brian Dable coming in, and this was
he's done an amazing job. Yeah.
But if you said to me right now, who's going to win Giants Texans, I'd pick the Giants. And if you said to me who's going to win Giants Lions, I'm going to pick the Giants. And if they have 8 wins, like if you said to the Giants that at the start of the season 8 wins, I think most Giants fans would have been delighted. So it'll be interesting to see. But to me, this was about the Seahawks, finding a way to win again. And Tyler Lockett obviously coming back, and he had a couple of mistakes, but he comes up big when needed. Look, Geno continues to be very impressive. And ultimately, the Seahawks are tightening up on defense. They were really, really bad at the start of the season, but they have tightened that up.
Not the best day for Daniel Jones passing wise, but it just wasn't their day. I agree with you. If they can get to 8-2, they're making the playoffs. And well, as it stands, they are. There's no real. I mean, if you're looking at the wild card in terms of the NFC East, it's a pity for the Giants that they're in that division, because you're looking at the Eagles. I mean, and we can talk about the Eagles in a bit, but Jesus, how many wins how many wins are they going to get? I mean, it's week 9 next week, and they're still unbeaten. I mean, this is scary biscuit sort of situation if you're a Cowboys or Giants fan. I really like Kenneth Walker yesterday, but I'm excited to watch the Seattle team in Munich in 2 weeks. And I think the bye after that is coming at the right time for them. Geno gets a week off. He's looked great. I mean, we've seen it ourselves against our team week 1. Has your opinion changed in Pete Carroll much? Because as a leader.
I apologized to Pete Carroll publicly on this show last week.
Did you?
Yes, I did. And it's not about USC, but absolutely about doubting him this season, because what he has done with that roster and everything that was said has been incredibly impressive. We talked about coalescing around like Geno and I know I've been enormously impressed. And their draft, they absolutely knocked it out of the park. Every one of their rookies has been contributing from the off and contributing massively. And you mentioned Kenneth Walker there. Yeah, he's been brilliant.
I've been impressed with Pete Carroll as a leader. I didn't know what to think of him after the trade of Wilson. I didn't know what to think of him after the whole situation in week 1, and it was like a Super Bowl in Seattle. But Seattle have been great through the weeks. I was talking to Cliff Averill a few weeks ago, and he was talking about what he was really like in the dressing room. And then we seen him speak to Tyler Lockett yesterday, and it just seems that the team has a lot of respect for him. And to take that team now where he currently has them. Look, I'll give you an example. If the Giants were to start faltering a bit, I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm saying hypothetically, say the Giants lost next 2 games, and then they did, have a bit of an issue over the next couple of months. If Carroll keeps winning with that team, and they continue to improve with Geno Smith, and you can see that offense progress, Carroll could be up there with discussion in terms of his performance at the end of the year. I think he's done a stellar job so far. But shout out to all the Seahawks and Giants fans. Hope you enjoyed the game, and bring on week 9. Right, I'm just changing the order here. Going to talk about the Eagles, Colin. We were about to get a taxi last night, and I said, well, we can watch Game Pass. Game Pass was down. Shout out to Game Pass. They fixed the issues. All good. So we couldn't have seen it anyway. So we got the train, and we missed everything. Got out of the train. AJ Brown had 3 passing touchdowns. I mean, that is unbelievable. He is unreal. But more than that, and you said this at the start of the year, the evolution of Jalen Hurts in this offense, are they unstoppable as it stands?
They're not. Nobody is unstoppable, and let's remember that there have been other teams that have had winning records. But I really like this Eagles team. I've talked about that at the start of the year. I don't think there's an obvious flaw for me on the roster. I think there are teams that have perhaps more talented players, but I think you would struggle to find a better, more cohesive team. What I love about Jalen Hurts is he knows exactly who he is as a QB. He doesn't try to be something that he's not. And his leadership and the way in which those guys respond to him is fantastic. They have contingency plans in place for most injuries. Obviously, if you lose, really top players, that's always going to hurt you. And say, if Hurts went down, that would be, where do you go from there? But as it stands, this Eagles team are doing, you can only beat what's in front of you. And they're doing it well. Yeah, yesterday AJ Brown was absolutely fantastic. Hurts was really good again, and they can just keep rolling on. And I think they have, the only concern, I suppose, for the Eagles is as long as complacency doesn't creep in. But I think in Hurts and Sirianni, they have a couple of guys who are going to keep them on track. And yeah, they are, I think, as we sit here right now at the end of October, very beginning of November, the Eagles' absolute aim should be to have that number 1 seed and lock that up as early as possible.
What about Kenny Pickett? In the pre-game yesterday, a guy that we've been very, very fortunate to bring on to this broadcast previously, Coach Bill Collier, called out the Steelers for how they're handling Kenny Pickett. It's just a scheme, It just doesn't. I actually feel a bit sorry for him. It seems like they've put all the weight on him, and he's a rookie. It's like bringing someone in. It's like bringing somebody into a new job and going, "Hey, here's 15 people's pieces of work to do. You've got 2 weeks. Get it done." Like all these tasks. He just doesn't look comfortable. And I know that can change over time when he's given more opportunities and honestly probably less of a workload. And I get that it's the NFL and I get that he has to do certain things, but the reality is he's been expected to do too much at the minute. And if you're expected to do too much, then that's not good. I mean, like, look, in any game that he has played from the start of the game to the finish, he has averaged around 45 attempts per game. This is a rookie quarterback in the NFL. Like, do you not think that's a bit much?
Yeah, it is. And the Steelers have but the Steelers' issue is not Kenny Pickett right now. The Steelers' issue is Najee Harris, who has been awful. Najee, there were big expectations on him coming into the season, and he has not delivered in any way, shape, or form. And I think that's what the Steelers have got to figure out. I think for me, when I look at it, I suppose in terms of we don't know again, right, what Pickett is. But you have to go with it because Trubisky ain't it. What I really liked was Mike Tomlin coming off the field, not yesterday, but the one before. It was a primetime game. Pickett had a really poor, and he just told him, there'll be better days. Keep your head up, and that's all you can do for your rookie QB. Yeah, I think the Steelers, in some ways, they do need to do more. He took a couple of really late hits against Buffalo, one to the head, one a low hit, and there was only one time where his O-line guy really got in the Bills' faces. I would have liked to see his entire team pile in at that point and back him up. So to me, I think much like the Jets, the Steelers need to plow on with Kenny Pickett this year, see what you have in him, but they need to find ways to get their big name players, the likes of Najee Harris, the likes of Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, get them more involved. I agree that they're putting too much on Pickett. He's a young guy. He's 4 starts at this point. Is it even 4 starts? And it can't all be on him, certainly. But it's going to be, you would fear for the Steelers, as good a coach as Tomlin is, it could be a long year in Pittsburgh.
Do you have trick-or-treaters at your door, Colin? No? Okay.
That is, Michael, that is the fireworks that you are hearing. We are we are coming up to 6 solid hours, and that's how loud they are, that they sound like they're knocking on my door.
Here, look, fireworks license high. That's all you need. I've got fond memories of heading to Emmyville as a child and getting fireworks. Fireworks in Miami last night. fireworks with the Miami Dolphins last night. My dear colleague, Mr. Simon Clancy, said this was Tua's best game. Exemplary performance. 29 of 36, 382 yards, 3 touchdowns on the day. Jesus wept, Colin. Tyreek Hill had 188 yards and didn't have a touchdown on 12 attempts. Like, if they can just get to the wild card, right? If they can get to the wild card, right? I'm starting to think on their day, Hill and Waddle cannot be covered at the same time. That offense on form is the best offense in the league on its day. And they showed it last night with 31 points. They get out against the Lions. Lions starting to really struggle, Colin. You know, they've had struggles every week through the season, but you know, I think we expected more of a 1-6 start for the Lions, and I think it's disappointing for Lions fans, disappointing for their coach. But man, look, the Dolphins comfortably, you know, march on with them in a 5-3, keeping quiet in the AFC. They'll want to get another run together after a couple of barren weeks with the whole concussion situation. But Tua looks sweet as, man.
Look, offensively they're really impressive, and I know Keith has mentioned there that the combined receiving yards for Hill and Waddle, and 1688, which is actually the highest combined total between your top two receivers in the Super Bowl era, which tells you how they are performing. So I would say if Tyreek Hill keeps this up, Christian McCaffrey might well have a rival for Offensive Player of the Year, because he has.
What about Saquon? Do you think Saquon is a shout?
Saquon has a shout. I still think there's a long way to go, and you know the back end of the season following the bye will be massively important. But I would say those three guys. And hey, the Chiefs had a bye, and at this point in time, nobody has as many receiving touchdowns as Travis Kelce. So it's funny, he's kind of, because we expect so much of Kelce, he's flying under the radar a little bit.
But it's so subjective as well, isn't it? Like, it's so subjective.
Yes, I know, of course it is, to an extent. Now, it might be that as we go through the season, it'll become more evident, and Cooper Kupp had the Triple Crown last year, which, you know, you can see why. So, I think it'll be interesting. But the speed that Hill and Waddle bring is terrifying for defenses. It will be interesting to see what the Dolphins might do at the trade deadline. They seem to be talked about as contenders for a couple of different players. I think they maybe expect to make a playoff push, and they're kind of gearing up for that. If people haven't seen it, there was an interesting clip of Mike McDaniel on the sideline yesterday, telling his coordinators to get the penalty sorted, because the Dolphins didn't get off to the best start, but they got it cleaned up. And for the Lions, we mentioned this over the past few weeks on the show. They're not where they want to be. They flash, right? And offensively, sometimes they're great, but defensively, they've made a change today. They've sacked their D-backs coach, I suppose, in the hope of making a change. But there, at no point, I think, when the Lions are up, does it feel that, they're definitely going to hold on to a lead, and it's an issue. And the feel-good factor around Dan Campbell and everything that went with it, if they don't start to get a few wins in the next few weeks, that'll, because it's already beginning, to dissipate, that'll completely evaporate.
I think they play the Bears next week, so that's Miami, that is. I seen a comment from Keith. Thank you, Keith. And for people on the podcast, Colin is letting off bangers in the garden, and I will try to remove the noise. Probably won't work, but sure, it's a bit of crack at the end of the day. It's a one-off for Halloween, Colin. It's good crack. Right, you actually set that comment up beautifully about, teams under pressure. By God, the Colts are under pressure. Did you hear that crowd last night at the end of the game? The boos. Oof. Now, we have been very fortunate, and we've dealt with the Colts on this broadcast previously in the off season. We've had the GM on, and the Colts have been great to deal with. GM is brilliant. Cannot say a bad word about the team at all in terms of that sense. They're not doing well, Colin, and the manner in which they lost at the end. Wow. Commanders 4-4. Commanders are 4-4. Explain to me what is going wrong in Indianapolis. Like the fact that Ryan is now gone, he's benched. That's a complete show. Jonathan Taylor had 76 yards, but below him there was nothing else going there. And Pierce was the highest receiver at 65 yards on 3 attempts. Taylor Heineke, you can't not like Taylor Heineke. The guy just is fun. Scary Terry lit it up for Halloween, and for a neutral, it was a great game. Like, I really loved the end of it.
There's more fireworks going off. I am glad though that people are getting a sense of what it has been like and what it is like for children and dogs in North Dublin.
I forgot you had a dog, and I've been laughing, and I now apologize. All right, I apologize.
They're not the crazy thing. They're not even like directly at the house. It's just the size of the fireworks. But yes, Halloween, Scary Terry, fitting that he came up with it, and an Indianapolis native, and made his feelings clear at the end of after that grab right at the end. I think that the QB situation, that's the issue for the Colts, right? And the GM and the head coach have been trying to deal with that ever since Andrew Luck moved on. It's just been a conveyor belt. I will say though, in terms of moving on from Matt Ryan, the guy he comes in and there's no change. So it wasn't like Matt Ryan, like, moving on wasn't an issue. That wasn't what cost the Colts. What's been an issue for the Colts, to me, is the O-line. And they have some of the highest paid O-line players in the league. And it's been a disaster. And
it was brought up all summer in training camp. They kept saying it to them. Is your O-line ready? Do you think this O-line's ready? And they were sort of brushed under. And now look at it now. Like, I mean, the season is gone for them, surely.
Yep. Well, I mean, look, you never know, but you can't look at it and say with any confidence, right, that the Colts, you would expect the Colts to win the division. They're not that far back, so theoretically they could, but you can't magically fix your O-line. So unless they are going to, make an unexpected trade out of nowhere, and that would be very difficult given the draft capital that they have to bring in an O-line piece. It's difficult to know. I thought Frank Reich did reasonably well outside of the call on the goal line, but overall I think Reich did okay with what he had available. But the Colts, and I'm sure their owner, will look at it and will be enormously disappointed. But ultimately, it's going to come down. They've decided to run with this QB. They want to see what they have. But it's tough to say that, unless he really, really shows out in the second half of the season, is this going to be another off-season where the Colts make a move for a QB? What will happen there? We talked a little bit. Derek Carr's contract with the Raiders was a 3-year extension, but really was only a 1-year extension. Could he potentially be available in the off season, and could that be something that the Colts might look at?
Going from one quarterback to another, my guy Kirk yesterday looked good. He's a dual threat column. The guy Kirk Cousins yesterday is just like the funny thing is, like, he had pretty standard enough stats, but if you watch the game back, he looked really, really good in that first half. Well, he didn't score enough points, but he looked a lot more comfortable. The question that I'm trying to get to here is, are the Vikings good value at 6-1 in the NFC? Do you think that they could make a push? And if they did get to like the last 4 teams in the NFC, do you think they are good value? Because they seem like, even at 6-1, that I'm still not convinced, which is funny. Kyler Murray yesterday put up 326 passing yards, but had 2 interceptions. I mean, you can't. Like, people are giving Zach Wilson go for having 3 interceptions. Zach Wilson had more passing yards than Kyler Murray yesterday, albeit Kyler Murray had a few more completions. DeAndre Hopkins leading the day on 160 receiving yards. It just wasn't the beat. Cardinals falling to 3-5. The NFC West is so like meh right now. It's like, oh, does anybody want to win it? Each week is like a different situation. I mean, for me, it seems like the Niners are going to be probably up there. But this was a bit of a weird game. A slow start to the game, Colin. Not that many scores. I think it was 14-10 at halftime, so it was slow enough in regards to some of the other games, but then it exploded in the second half. What's your thoughts on this Vikings team? Do you think they're good value at 6-1?
I think they should win their division, certainly. I mean, don't get me wrong, they have a couple of really tough games coming up. You talked about the Commanders a while ago on Heineke. The Commanders always seem to stick around. They have to play the Bills and the Cowboys. They have the Lions and the Colts on the schedule as well. I think for them, looking around the rest of the division, they would expect to win it. So what record can they finish with? And once you're in the playoffs, you never know, especially when you have a player like Justin Jefferson. But ultimately, Mark Cockrell has said it on the show time and time again, you don't know what you're going to get with the Vikings. And the Vikings have, remember the miracle in Minneapolis and the Case Keenum season. So the Vikings have done it with, I think, less talented QBs. But can you trust the Vikings? No. But when you look around, Michael, I pose a question to you. When you look around the rest of the NFC, who out the Eagles obviously are, the top team, right? And the 49ers defense and the Cowboys defense are legit. And that would be the concern, I think, for the Vikings, that if you ran into one of them on the wrong day, that's where they could get caught out. But around the rest of it, like, depending on how the path worked out, could they find themselves in a championship game? Absolutely.
I agree. There's no other team in the NFC at the minute that stands out at all. The Rams look too far back. There's a lot of talk at the start of the year, and they made a bit of a slow start. Like, well, give them a few weeks, they'll get up to speed. They haven't got up to speed yet, and we're going into week 9 this weekend. Gino and the Seahawks.
Yeah, I think Gino and the Seahawks could certainly make a playoff push. I mean, again, once you're there, you never know. It's difficult when you're on the road in the playoffs. But nothing is impossible, and the Seahawks will be bolstered by the fact that they have a very experienced head coach. The worry for the Seahawks is, as good as they've been playing, as impressive as the rookies have been, and we've talked about that, a couple of injuries could make the Seahawks in particular, like they've really good starters. A couple of injuries could, and like when they lost Penny, they had Walker to come in, and that was great. But like, if they were to get some injuries on the goal line or that's where, or if Metcalf came back, like that was something we probably didn't touch on. How quickly he came back, that was crazy.
It was bizarre, absolutely bizarre. Let's get a quick fire in before we give our picks for Monday. There's a game tonight, Colin. There's a comment, somebody said, here we go Brownies, here we go, woof woof. So there you go. They're playing. We'll talk about them in a wee second. I'll very quickly talk about the Raiders game going up against the Saints. And by Jesus, yesterday was a bad day for the Raiders, Colin. Broncos winning in London. Broncos been struggling. Talked that Hackett was going to be fired if he didn't win. Now the Raiders are sitting 2-5 in the West, in what was supposed to be the best division of football, and they couldn't put up a point against the Saints. The Saints with Andy Dalton at quarterback. And I'm going to leave that there, and we can have a proper conversation on that when we're all here. You're going to mention or talk about the Titans last night beating the Texans. Derrick Henry and Malik Willis, not bad.
This was the Derrick Henry show. Willis, obviously, lucky third round QB. They did enough, and for the Texans, Davis Mills hasn't made the leap that it was unlikely, but I think that was potentially what it was about. We're hearing talk they might look to move Brandon Cooks on. They've made some changes in the front office. I think for the Texans, this is all about probably the draft, and realistically, they're going to be getting a new QB, and it's going to be a new era, I think, in Houston next year.
For me, I'll talk about the Cowboys and the Bears. First off, in the Bears, and again, I said it previously, fair play to the Bears going into New England when nobody gave them a help in hell on Monday night last week. They go into Dallas and put up 29 points, albeit they let in 49. Offensively, 29 points in Dallas. You can't really ask much more of a guy like Justin Fields in that, to be fair. Really decent stats. 17 to 23, 150 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and then 60 yards rush with a rushing touchdown. I'll happily jump on the Justin Fields hype train if that's the way it's going to go. Obviously, I think they were always going to struggle to get anything more than 29 to 35, 36 points. But Darnell Mooney was the lead receiver on the day. You need to get more out of David Montgomery. Sorry, in Keelhara. I know David Montgomery had something there, but Cole Kmet as well has had a quiet sort of few weeks there. They need to get something. The Cowboys' defense is legit, as we said. And they march on 6-2. I rate the Cowboys now, obviously, as the second highest team in the NFC. They played the Eagles at the end of November. Yeah,
I believe so. Yeah, I don't know
it's
what
either that
day.
or Christmas Eve.
Fred might know exactly when that game
Fred
game
can put
is.
it in. I'll tell you what, Colin, if you're in the States, then you should be going to that game. That game's going to be a cracker high, because like I know we're going to quick fire this, but it is very disappointing the quality of the teams in the NFC this year. As a fan, it's not great to watch. Like, I'm sorry, it's not. I mean,
in fairness, I will say that for years and years and years, the NFC absolutely bullied and bossed the AFC. If you go back to the 80s into when the Broncos beat the Packers, I think that it had been 13 years, if not more, that the NFC had won the Super Bowl. And that was it. There you go. It's Christmas Eve.
Here, I'll do well to get the wife to put that on TV on Christmas Eve. I tell you what, that's going to be that Christmas Eve. So we've all these games on the Saturday. That's going to be great crack. We head down to the Woolshed. No,
I'll be at home in Cork at that point. Just a couple of things though on the Bears. Michael, Roquan Smith has obviously moved on to the Ravens. I think that everyone knew that was very likely to happen, that he would be traded. But for the Bears, look, it's all about next year, right? And I think they finally leaned into what Justin Fields can do. I think it's going to be really important they give Justin Fields a receiver, because the improvement has come with nobody to throw to. And, year 3, Josh Allen got Diggs, Jalen Hurts got AJ Brown. The Bears are going to have $100 million in cap space. They have to go out, and they have a huge number of draft picks. They have their first round, they have 2 in the second, they have 2 in the fourth, and 2 in the fifth. There's going to be a huge amount of turnover for the Bears. But I do think it has taken a season and a half, but finally we're actually seeing designed runs for Justin Fields, and what a difference it makes when you actually play to your QB strengths.
Right, you're going to talk about the Bills. Now, I'll just say this. Boogies are laughing. We have a betting show each week, in case anyone was wondering. The handicap column was 10.5 or 11.5. And how many points did the Bills win by? 10. Wasn't it? It was 10.
10, 27-17.
And I did say it. I think I said it to Brian. I said it to a few other boys as well. I thought that, I know the Packers have had a poor start to the season by all standards, but still 10.5, 11.5 handicap when you've got Aaron Rodgers, and then, Josh Allen didn't have a great second half. Still, it was always risky to go on there.
Yeah, but it's quite something, isn't it? Like, this wasn't a great game for the Bills or Josh Allen. They still beat the Packers by 10. That's a nice situation to be in when a bad game gives you a 10-point victory. I think for the Bills, yeah, you're going to be up and down a little bit, but winning when you're not playing well is ultimately what you endeavor to do. Devin Singletary was the lead back. Didn't quite get to the averaging the 5 yards per carry that you would want, but Stephon Diggs had a monster game, and we saw him arguing with Jair Alexander for the majority of the game. Neither of them would go into what that was all about, but that was interesting. Look, the Packers have now lost 4 on the bounce. There's a lot of talk whether they will look to do something. Romeo Dubes looked more like his touchdown catch was really impressive, and maybe he's beginning to develop. But the Packers have got work to do if they are to sort this out. They're fortunate that the rest of the NFC isn't that strong. And when you consider their next game, they've got to go to Detroit, so they have to win that one.
Massive game.
After that, they welcome the Cowboys to Lambeau, and the Cowboys, I imagine, will make life pretty tough for them. And then they have the Titans, and that Titans D-line is serious business.
Is that Cowboys game?
So it's Cowboys, Titans, Eagles.
So they play the Cowboys in night of the Munich game, yeah?
Yes.
Oh. First world problems. Is that Sunday Night Football?
No, it's not even Sunday Night Football. That is the 9:25 game.
Right, that could be a Steiner or whatever you call it over there sort of evening. Are you going to Munich? Have you decided yet? Are you going to do
it? I would love to go to Munich. I still haven't won the Euro Millions.
No, you can sleep on the hotel floor. It's fine. You get a flight, Colin. As I'm publicly calling you out here, and hopefully we'll know tomorrow the crack. Right.
I would, and unfortunately, higher ed is a wonderful profession, and I enjoy working with the students. But from working in education, Michael, it's a vocation rather than a profession.
Well, as a lad that previously taught before I very fortunate to work in the league, I got into Belfast this morning and I said to myself, you get 15 suitcase? I could have got to school no matter what. So here, we'll see the crack. I know it's a different kettle of fish when it's in Munich, but yeah, it's going to be a crack in Munich next weekend, please God. Monday Night Football picks very quickly. Bengals 4-3 going to Cleveland, not too far away. 2-5. Colin, do you know who Mark and Brian are picking? Because I haven't checked.
I do. Both of those gentlemen are going with the Bengals, and we saw it yesterday. How many close games? How many kind of one-score games that come down to the wire? Like a couple of weeks ago, nobody would have given the Panthers a chance to beat the Bucs or to be competitive against the Falcons. Before the season started, nobody would have given the Falcons a chance. So I think it's always a dangerous business to think that there are going to be blowouts in this league. Jamar Chase being injured is a significant blow to the Bengals because he is so explosive. And the Browns have, at times this year, Jacoby has looked really good. But at others, they have found ways to lose games that they really, really should have won. I'm going to say that despite the Jamar Chase injury, the Bengals find a way to win. But this is a divisional matchup between two sides who, don't like each other. They'll be. I think this will be a hard fought game. I think this will be one really in the trenches. But the Bengals O-line has improved in recent weeks. Burrow has had more time, and we talked about it before. The move to the shotgun rather than playing everything under center has proven a wise decision, and a change that Zach Taylor and the Bengals really needed to make. So for that reason, I'm going to go with the Bengals to squeak it.
After watching the game tape of Burrow last week, I think this is a home run situation. Was it over 400 yards? 481 yards passing last week. I'm picking the Bengals. I've got like 13 games right this week. I'm just going to go straight in and say I'm picking the Bengals, and he's playing with a lot more confidence. I think that's the key thing here. And of course, you're always going to miss somebody like Jamar Chase, but you still got Joe Mixon, you still got Tyler Boyd, you still got that defense. No, the Bengals win this game by 10.5 on the handicap. There you go. So 11 points. They win the game by tonight. Colin, just obviously a big thanks to everyone that maybe stopped over the last few days, spoke to us. Again, a few people were chatting to me this morning in Belfast, and fair play, chatting to me at 5:30 in the morning. You done well to get a few things out of me. Fair play. Were you a celebrity, Colin, in the airport last night?
I will say that there were a huge number of Arsenal fans in the airport last night. More Arsenal fans than Bronco or Jags fans. Just before we go, Michael, there was one question as to whether the Cowboys will make a trade for a wide receiver. I think that's probably one to keep an eye on, because I think, given their record and where they are and the strength of the rest of the NFC, that is one I certainly, if I was Jerry Jones and I was looking at it, I'd see what was out there. I think there might well be a number of trades that go through just before the deadline. So let's see. Obviously, Bradley Chubb seems to be the big kind of talking point at the moment, but the Cowboys getting a wide receiver, yeah, I wouldn't be at all surprised.
Let's see what happens. We'll be back on Wednesday night at
half nine,
and then we're back on Thursday.
2 guests.
Podcast up in about half an hour. Thanks for joining us again, folks. Please like, subscribe. Have a great Monday night. Good luck.